Sanbonan Africa, and welcome to another insightful episode of the Civil Society Podcast. Gamalang Xabiso Ndinisa, and today I'm joined by three special guests from SoWeVote. Otsile Nkadimeng. Otsile, how are you?
I'm alright. I'm very happy to be there.
Happy to have you. To kick off this interview, can you just tell us a little bit about what you do at SoWeVote for the viewers at home?
Thank you so much for having me again. Uh, well, SoWeVote fundamentally is a youth voting advocacy platform. We started it here late 2022, myself and Dr. Mustafa. And the basis for SoWeVote was that we saw the 2024 elections coming. And we thought about our peers who we went to high school with, then that they'd be voting in this election for the very first time. But the reality is the majority of the information surrounding politics, manifestos, the way government works in the country. The information is either technical or it's just not accessible for people to read. And so what we decided to do is then we actually create a platform that people could engage with that helps break down manifestos into the basic areas that people vote on, such as the economy, the environment, social programs, and just whether that's the different party that on foreign policy decisions, like the wars going on in the world, Ukraine, Gaza. And I mean, it took off from there. People were very interested. I mean, it caught us like a surprise because we grew up knowing that young people aren't interested in politics. Well, it turns out that if you make information surrounding politics more accessible and understandable, a lot of young people are engaged. We grew by about 1,500 followers within our first 4 months, which for us was, I mean, you can imagine 2 grade 11s. Suddenly you have 1,400 people. Yeah, people follow, and we were absolutely confused by the program that SoWeVote was lately, and that's what we started with initially, and now we're trying to expand to programs to schools, where we can partner with schools and use RCL programs to stimulate democracy, to help embed from that very, very critical foundational phase in student lives.
Wow. So what I'm picking up from what you're telling me is that you engage with different sectors of society and different people in different society, right? But then how do you define active citizenry as SoWeVote? How does your work impact active citizenship?
Well, fundamentally, it goes back to first principle. You know what you know, and you don't know what you don't know. So we need to start with the base of giving people the information so that they can know more about what's happening in their society and what's happening in their country. And fundamentally, it's so evolved that with the principle that we subscribe to that if we just make the information there accessible that people can touch, they're more likely to take action. There's a period close to, I think it's 3 or 4 months before an election. It's known as the crystallization period. It's when people who are making a decision about who they're going to vote for or how they're going to get involved, that's when they make that decision. So SoWeVote, our goal was to get the information out there and ready for people so that by the time that crystallization period comes 3 or 4 months before the election, people can go on our platform, check what's available there, and see what inspires to them, and then they can crystallize that specific choice. And, in terms of getting people out on the streets, when it comes to protest actions or just engaging in politics, that's something we're breaking into now. So at the moment, the only piece of legislation we actually tried to get people involved in is the commenting of the amending to the Electoral Act again. And, it's been a very tough process because legislation isn't built for people. It's built for legislators.
Yeah.
And for us, it's the process of actually breaking down that information. And in that, we partnered with the Participation Project, which is another youth-led initiative founded by, funny enough, our old politics director, Tara Bus. And the Participation Project breaks down the legislation. So before we comment on anything, we go to the Participation Project and we say, Tara, can you and your team create a breakdown on this specific piece of legislation? Because we want our followers to, one, engage with it, but two, be part of the active process of commenting on laws and the legislation. And I mean, we saw a lot of engagement from that. I think we got around 60 people engaging with it, which, for legislation, considering the fact that we did that, I think it was the week publishers were closed it. You need to get people to the deadline, at the end deadline. But we did it a week and we had 60 people engaging with it. And for us, it was an enormous, and we can't get a success because getting 60 people to comment on education, some organizations have month and month in advance to get people to comment at, coming from the climate space, when the climate change bill was coming up for comments. If it put a teeth getting people to comment, to engage with the legislation. But at SoWeVote, we found that these partnerships on digital platforms, I think that's very important, at digital platforms, action purpose, bypass having to go through the long, arduous process of first breaking everything down person that I need, schedule it that we can leave people and then the restrictions of where you are geographic. We can go across the country. We can meet, engage with them, and digitally, and do that work. Uh, you know, another thing something to remind. Sorry, I yap a lot. I'm getting to a point. I'm getting to a point here. But one of the other engagements that we have been involved in, and this is where typically when the time to talk was with GAMA, Global African Model United Nations Agents. Now, this is a global MAN organization and have a youth-led initiative. Shouts out to founder Zaki Suleiman and Sipiwe Mashilo. And this organization takes simulations of modern of the United Nations, Pan-African parliaments, even parliaments, and they take it to schools and they let the young people then engage with this. And we partnered with Gamma at one of the areas at Open Weekly Academy for Leadership Academy for Girls, and we said, let's partner. We want to be part of the process. Let us come and actually do a short seminar about democracy to all of the young ladies and the young gentlemen there, so that they can see for themselves and just stimulate them what leadership looks like. What is this democracy thing that they're supposed to be representing, the values they're supposed to espouse, because things like Gamma, where the tiny story engage with young people and you just show them and create a depiction of what government and leadership should look like. But these types of organizations help us change mindsets. And when you change the mindset, you can change the society. Because I subscribe to that theory. A tsunami is made up of little dots of water. Now, if we each become a drop of water in the grander sea of bits, the ferocity and strength of a storm is what we can bring to democracy institutions, to our country. And so we go with partnering with other many organizations like that. And that's how we encompass each of the different areas you posted in the first.
Quite a mouthful. I'll take out a few tidbits. I hear you mentioning that you draw a lot from a law or policy, right? And you make it accessible to the layman. And from what I'm hearing you tell me is that you're only making it, or from my understanding is that you're only making it accessible to a certain caliber of youth, so children as young people within schools or academia. How do you break these complex ideas, these policies, these public participation responses to bills, simplified for even young people who, as a township, who have to access that information, or there's a bulging table that deals with, say, for example, in a mining sector community that is dealing with mine blasting, and they have to participate in that. How do you simplify those engagements for people who don't really have the caliber or the level of understanding that we're speaking at currently?
Well, let's just purpose this right there. The breakout on the way. That's when the teams do a very good job of making sure that I don't get too technical or myself falling into the job, But the challenge has been we can't really go far. I wish we could have our platform reaching people in every country with South Africa. Yeah. But the thing is, the work that we've done with no funding at all. So funding is a very big component of what we need, and so we want to scale what we're doing. So currently, we're closing the plane up line. That means you make mistakes. One of the mistakes perhaps that we haven't fully diversified in terms of socioeconomic standing in South Africa, the pool of people reaching out. But that's something we're on in the team and we're very confident about. But breaking down the policy, we also ourselves fundamentally in SoWeVote. If I had to explain this to my mother, my uncle, or my aunts, and thank God the SoWeVote team is diverse. Diverse socioeconomically, diverse culturally, ethnically. We ask ourselves how we do this, and we ask us, and it breaks down to three questions. What is it? What is you? And what is it? And how does it affect life? Because those are the three questions people actually want to know about vegetation, about laws, all of these things that are happening in South Africa. What does it do, and how does it affect? And that's where we start breaking down legislation and even party manifestos. And I must also add, and I say that, we speak to the past before we put out our bid for grapples on their manifestos, because we don't want to misrepresent where party stands, or we don't want any bias to come through. We want them themselves to even spread that among their supporters so they get a better understanding of what we stand for. And so those three questions that are the guiding focuses for the work that we do at SoWeVote, and how we begin to break down legislation, manifestos, policy, because ultimately, policy is what changes a country, it's what changes governments, what changes the status quo, whether we want to admit it or not. It is where people need to be involved, and when people are left out of the process, where people are excluded by the language, by the processes that are undertaken, that's where democracy is stolen. That's where you're right taken. And I think we see that time and time again, trend lines of authoritarianism, fallen in democracy, COP, the US. Misinformation, it's a huge thing. And we want to, I just to show you, we must be a wall that this trend beat itself across in South Africa. We must really be the firewall. And it's crazy to say that as a bunch of 20-year-olds, because SoWeVote is exclusively 20-year-old. But it's the recognition that no one is coming to save us. And that's the theme we need to pick it up across many countries where they end up falling, where people's rights are stolen right in front of them. They think someone is coming. No one is coming. And so we must be the one that stand into that gap and say, listen, we aren't as well experienced. We probably aren't as well versed as some people who think we are. But we are what we've got right now. And so what can we do with the information and the knowledge that we have as a team? And I would want to bring SoWeVote back down to that level where I talk to people, we're not the higher-minded young people. We're just like everybody else. We're majors of critical year at the high school.
I see. I'd say that active citizenry really should begin at a local level, at just engaging with your ward councillor to get your rubbish removal picked up. So I think when you teach people how to engage on that level with positions of authority, or people in position of authority and understanding their rights, I think they'd be more open to actually engaging with a national level rights or a national level engagement that deals with political voting or political participation. Anyway, segue. What has been the improvements since inception of SoWeVote? What improvements have you seen with young people and their engagement for governance or their participation level at all spheres? So at the most basic in terms of fundamental rights, all the way through to activism, all the way through to petitioning for different rights. What are the levels of engagements, and how is that either grown or has it been a decline in any of those areas? And then what is your solution for improving that?
Oh, okay. It's a very hard question. I think fundamentally let's talk to what the type of feedback we get. So the feedback we get from young people, firstly, before the election, was that thank you for putting this out. I didn't actually know this about this party, or when it came to registration and the deadline, process of registration, it was like, I didn't actually know how to register. I think, thank you. I'm not going to vote in this election, but I'm going to register for the next one. So those are the first two sets of feedback we used to get. But the one that really surprised us was where they say, this actually helped me have a conversation about who my family should be voting for. Because I think we often overlook the fact that the political culture in South Africa wasn't all people who were today. There was a very strong push pre the dispensation to quash any political dialogue in families, in community spaces. And it was actually very risky to engage in those conversations when a lot of people didn't choose to do that because they feared for their security. And those trend lines didn't break. There's put down household, they used to talk about policy. They used to talk about who they're going to vote for. And SoWeVote's platform and the information we put out about parties, about the election, it actually helped young people to have a conversation in their families And their parents actually love the platform themselves,
Yes.
which I really wish they made their parents down on Instagram so they follow us, so we'd have more followers. They didn't do that. But I mean, they're very engaged with our platform and with the content they're putting out. As well, that was a huge. It was a victory for us because it means now we have seen how we can cross generational divides. But then in terms of people getting active, becoming active citizens, the predominant the predominant demographic of SoWeVote has the young people, and it is the young people, irrespective of them taking it to their parents. And we have one particular young person, I don't want to say his name, he's still in high school, but he engaged in SoWeVote platform to such an extent that we're actually not part of gaining political conscience. He's still in high school, they didn't vote in the election. But he actually started his own youth organization, which brings together young people in his schooling community who are RCL members or SRC members, regardless of what your school holds them in that category, student government. And he brings it together across different schools, and he talk about common issues that they have, and talk about how, as from student body perspective, they could try to do something about it. And so, we brought him in, wanted to be part of our policy team, so that from the policy side, we could also have him, going back to my climate activist days, we wanted to be part of the policy team so that he can come and have an understanding of how policy works. And I've always said, and this comes back to climate activist days. I want to say climate politics days. I don't want to get into climate politics, but goes back to my days as a climate activist in high school. The best way I knew to explain climate change and climate policy to other young people and other high schoolers was for a high schooler to say, because someone outside of that environment talks in the mindset or either logic of the environment that they're in. A university students in the climate sciences will talk about climate science within that space as a professional, as a legislator. But a young person who's engaged in climate policy and has an experience is best equipped to talk to another high schooler about it, so then they know this is where we start, this is where we need to get an understanding, and then this is where we need to go. My 3 steps: organize, conscientize, mobilize. And we brought it in, and he has a great breadth of experience that he's gathering at SoWeVote, and now he's using that in his organization. And that's just one example of what we've been able to do at SWD with no funding, cut off any funders just for this. Imagine could do like it. But that's just an example. We've existed for coming on 3 years in September, December. I don't remember your birthday, but it's late in the year. And we really want to scale up our impact. And, part of that is now having a look at ourselves as a team and say, where can we go from here? How can we help the conversation? How can we help society from here as SoWeVote and with the people that come through us? And inviting back 2 years. That's when I'll have like huge, like, we bestow history in half and cut society.
Might have actually back for your birthday anniversary. To hear the progressive point of 2025.
Yeah.
Besides the methods that you mentioned or the medium that you engage as youth, that being the digital sphere and students' politics, as well as the legislature or legally. How are the other ways? How are you equipping young people to engage with government? What are the alternative methods? Say we have a viewer at home who's not really clued up on or doesn't really want to engage directly with politics or doesn't want to engage directly in politics. What are the alternatives, or what is your outlook in the way that young people's participation is going to shift or is shifting?
Firstly, if you want to get involved, SoWeVote has a volunteer program. So you can get involved in us. We're the director of politics, policy, of governance. We're the director of media, mobilization. I think those are all the directors. I'm a picky director, so if I forget one person, I guess I'm in big trouble. So we have these different directors, and and schools program directors. There, I brought them all. These directorates are where we try to impart the experience and knowledge of the members of the SoWeVote TTEC team with those that operate in the organization. I love Sundays. So if you know the story of the group of 72 that followed Christ,
Yeah.
there were 72 people that were close to Christ, and those are the people that received the information, were able to go out and distant it. Then there were the 12. The 12 who were the disciples of Christ. These were people that were closer to the vision, and they themselves became part of the lead. Then there's the core group of 3. Those are the ones that are closest to the leadership, and those are on the cult. Keep it together from the top. So very much of that same organizational structure, taken from the Bible, in SoWeVote, which is, we have the 72, which are our volunteers, and we bring them close and we equip them with what they need to know. So in their areas, the goal is for us to have chapters. In age, have chapters. As if we can have chapters by 2029. We didn't change the landscape of this country, but we want to have chapters by 2029. So we're establishing this volunteer program. So people want to get involved. They need to go into our social media on Instagram. I think TikTok is up and running already. If you have Twitter still, I recommend having Twitter, but if you still have Twitter, go to Twitter. The links are all there, spine, and be part of the 72. And if you're really more invested in deeper part, then more time be part of the 12. If you're really that push, be part of the 3. But ultimately, those are the mechanisms we're making available for young people who want to be directly or indirectly but engaged, because you're part of 72, but also be part of the behind the scenes operation. I think people have to forget about that. If not everyone has to be in the front, be in the top. South Africa's democracy was born by quite a lot of people who work behind the scene. That we saw Mandela, so Sudan, so Tambo, we saw William, but we don't know the kind of seed that kept the machinery rolling. And so that's the first area. The second area is, again, through our partnerships. So one of the biggest impasses right now, some spaces are made available to young people, but the way in which they're made available restrict the kind of young people that get into the room. So that's to say, I'll go back to climate, because that's really where it's sourced. The Presidential Climate Commission opens the stakeholder engagement to young people, but the link doesn't circulate to use inputs information where young people can get involved. And this is a very big impasse. And beyond that, you're inviting a young person. Some are either not in educational training, those that are in educational training, some don't have the financial means to get to these stakeholder engagements. Or you get the kids that were like me in high school that just liked things. Like, so I used to be more curious mind. So, but then you need to create provisions, transportation. You need to get them in the room, because when I talk to a young person, you need to get them in the room. So the second way we engage that we make those meet available. So when those things are available, we try to step in, practice first. We try to facilitate the push more young people getting involved. I wish our feedback could be more, but I always come back to the funding part. We were doing the best with what we have, and do we wish we could do more? Yes. Now to wrap this up, I have one final question for you. I don't know, it's going to be quite a tricky one, but I just want you to make it nice and succinct. Local elections are coming up next year, which is very important, right? What should young people look out for? How do they engage on a local level? And, how can they use that engagement to make the right decision for them who's in their local municipality or the area that they stay in? It is a very important question, and that's how we're going to get through this election. Start with where you are. Don't try and branch out that areas where you aren't directly affected, where you don't know people. Start in your community with people you know. So start with just having a basic conversation. We all like to assume we know what's wrong, but do we actually? We need to have that conversation. So start fundamentally with just gathering other people in your area and have a conversation. There's lots of public spaces that are available. If you don't public spaces available, but you have access to resources, Google Meet is great for an hour. Set up a WhatsApp group, set up forums, stop talking. Those conversations are what inform change. So I say, firstly, start there. Second area, there's lots of resources available. Perhaps one of our Achilles heels and SoWeVote is that more than being an organizer, we're a resource. So SoWeVote is a resource for you. Section 27 is a resource for you. People's Assembly is a resource for you. The Parliamentary Monitoring Group is a resource for you. It's going to take a lot to feed into trying to make any type of change at a local level or whatever scale you want to aim for. But part of it is talking to people, organizing people, and then mobilize around a collective goal. So once you make use of the resources that are available to you, and it's going to be hard. That's the way it goes. It's not made for us to easily engage in the space. It's going to be hard, and I want to take on that very honest, very frank assessment. It's going to be hard, and it's going to be. Then I feel like it's impossible, but you need to power through that and keep engaging these resources until you get a level of understanding. Reach out. You know, you watch this podcast, you see me. Reach out to us at SoWeVote. We can try help. With whatever limited resources we have, can try help. Reach out to formation in your area that are already mobilized. Reach out to some of the formation that already don't, like the Caprada Foundation or the National Abuse Coalition, and help will come in some form. But we must give people the idea that this is going to be easy. If you want to fix something, especially given how hard, difficult things are in South Africa now, you must ready yourself for a very heavy upper battle. But it'll be worth it. It'll be worth it. The change that you will see will be worth it. And that's why you must do it. You must remind yourself that every single time it will be worth it.
Absolutely. Africa, actually, as you've heard, with all the dissecting politics that are moving around our sector, it has become very, of course, for us to engage with what's happening in our locale. So if you really want to engage with SoWeVote, they hand over here on the bottom, on the banner. Please engage with them and take a leaf out of the Otsile Nkadimeng book. With that said, Otsile, thank you so much for joining us on the Civil Society podcast, and we hope to see your organization grow even so now. Thank you.
Oh, bye-bye.